Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we pick the right topics, get the right guests, ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. We have a big show for you tonight because it's a sector that affects all of us. We're dealing with the Minister for Works and Housing. He's a minister who's taking over not too long ago, was Information Minister for many, many years, and he's hit the ground running. We'll be discussing three main issues. We'll look at the controversial Saglemi housing project, what's up with it. We'll also talk about the issue of flooding as the rains come up and how prepared we are in desilting our drains so the rains don't take us offside. And we'll end with plans by the ministry to look at victims from the spillage of the Akosombo Dam and what should be done for them. Kojo Oppong is my guest. When we come back, stay with us. So welcome back to the show. So my guest tonight is Kojo Oppong, MP for Fuasi Eribi, and are you minister designate or now full minister?
I am minister.
Minister.
Yeah.
You didn't need to go for vetting?
No. I mean, the Supreme Court has ruled on this matter way before.
So because you were a minister for information, you moved in straight.
Yes.
But some of the others have not been approved yet.
No. So if you're a deputy minister becoming a minister, or a deputy minister becoming a minister of state, or if you were not a minister becoming either a deputy or a minister, you now require parliamentary approval for that role that you are going to.
So for you at Works and Housing, Asenso at Roads, I think about 6 of you, you already started working,
yes.
And the others are waiting.
Yes.
So who's the Minister of Information as we speak?
So I'm the caretaker Minister for Information currently.
Oh.
But I'm also very lucky to have the Minister Designate for Information also being the Deputy Minister for Information. So she has capacity to function now as Deputy Minister, save for signing official documentation, and then I just support her with.
And she worked with you for at least 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
I see. So this is why you were at the GJA 75th anniversary?
Yes.
Because I was wondering what that had to do with Works and Housing.
I was at my capacity as caretaker.
Caretaker minister. Yeah. So did you give a speech?
No, I declined. So I just supported.
So you yielded the floor?
Yeah.
I see. This Minister for Works, is this something you wanted? How does it work? Is it the president that said, hey, go and do Works, or you said, this is what I want?
Well, the president invited me over to the office and had a conversation with me that he thought I had discharged my obligations at information to his satisfaction. And he also thought that I should bring the same leadership and zeal to tackle some issues in Works and Housing. And so he was reassigning me. Yeah. And then I think the next morning, the letter was dispatched to the speaker, informing the speaker of the actual official act that had been occasioned, and had to spend the first, I think, about 3 weeks trying to understand the terrain. Then I went on a retreat with the leadership to set a set of priorities for the 10 or 9 months that we have, because I can't do everything. I can only do a few things in this period, and so within this limited period we are trying to do our best to achieve our priority plan in this period. I
know you're a lawyer, also broadcaster. I did some business, so you should be able to function in any leadership role. But for those of us from outside, we see some ministries as technical, like energy ministry is like a technical ministry. Finance looks technical. What kind of ministry is Works and Housing? So every ministry has the technical layer. Okay. And then you also have the policy layer. All right. The policy layer is where ministers and deputy ministers come in, where the necessary briefs and technical stuff are put together, and then you have the responsibility of bringing policy direction, which should be in consonance with the broader government's policy agenda. So the policy direction is one. Secondly is your own leadership ability to get things done in that particular area. And the third thing is your ability to bring together some technical advisors who can help bridge the gap between your personal knowledge or technical skill and then the particular technical area. From a media perspective, when we again look at ministries, finance always has coverage, roads very visible. The ministries that don't usually get coverage, I can say housing. It seems as if either there's always one big government project that's never taking off or some controversy. So you don't really, if you do clicks of ministries, this ministry doesn't seem to have a lot of action. Are we misunderstanding the ministry? No, I think that every ministry has action. It's only about how much of that action the leaders of that ministry elect to have the public see. All right. When I was information minister, I used to consistently draw the attention of my colleagues to the fact that even the most simple or the mundane things that you are doing in your ministry, if you would let the PR teams
bring it out. The public will get an understanding of what you are doing and how to participate in it and give you feedback, etc. So every ministry has action. It's just about how much of it you elect to let the public see.
So I take it that because of your background, you want to give this ministry more visibility.
Yes, and also because I think that it's important to get public participation in many of the things we are doing. A lot of our work, if you don't get the support of the public, you won't succeed. And so I believe that it's important to carry the public along as we work.
Final point before I go into substantive. It seems to me there are two problems here. The fact that there's a big housing deficit, which of course you have a short time to solve, but the Saglemi project, which has become like an albatross. Were those two things the key things the president said to you to come
and
deal with?
It's like you were a fly on the wall when we had our conversation. But yes, the president mentioned the Saglemi project and then the broader housing deficit. We have a housing deficit of about 1.8 million units in this country today. We are delivering just about 40,000 units a year, and that's even mostly by the private sector and then by individuals who are doing their own homes.
Okay.
And so you need to introduce interventions that can catalyze the rate at which we are developing those housing units. Unfortunately, Ghana over the years has been literally using one approach, which is state-led. So government looks for money to build, and if government is not doing that, then we wait for the private sector to build. We are now trying to move to a new dimension where we say, how can government partner with the private sector, provide the private sector the necessary incentives and stimulants so that the private sector can run as is being done in places like Morocco, Austria, Kenya, even Cote d'Ivoire. So the focus that I'm bringing to bear on the housing question is, how do we partner the private sector, provide support to the private sector so the private sector can close this gap for us in the next 10 years.
I want to show viewers a background of the Saglemi housing project, because I think it's the biggest issue in housing, and this report was filed 2 years ago, but I feel it gives a good sense of how the issue became prominent. Hassan Ayariga had gone to the place with a camera to complain and asked basically people to occupy the place because he thought this was a big waste of money. He accused all politicians of being part of the waste. So this report is filed by Hansen Ajima. It's a bit dated, but it will give us a good basis to look at what the ministry is trying to do now to address it.
While others live in insanitary overpopulated areas due to the poor housing system in the country, but well-intended projects like the Saglemi housing project that could have addressed the challenge are yet to be utilized. This concern has been the basis of social media outbursts over the project by the flag bearer of the All People's Congress, Hassan Ayariga.
All the glasses will break. All the windows will break. Can you imagine? Look at the noise. This is our taxpayers' money. It doesn't belong to any party. It's not for NDC, it's not for MPP, it's not for APC. It's for the taxpayers. We pay taxes to build this. And we are wasting it. And we sit down and go and borrow money. And this is what we do with the money borrowed. Just for some people to make money, and then we waste it here. This is it. There's no end. We can't even access the entrance. We can't even access the entrance. Huh? We can't even access the entrance. Look, we can't even find an entrance to the properties.
The Saglemi project, initiated by the erstwhile NDC administration in 2012, was to create 5,000 housing units for Ghanaians. The project was the second after a similar one started by the Kojo administration. But the current government has had issues with the then NDC government for starting a new project without completing the old ones.
The previous government's projects, it didn't. It rather went to do a new project, bypass home where one of the affordable housing projects was. When miles and miles away, just for political consideration, this project was designed in Saglemi. A lot of things were not considered into it. But I believe that if you have a national housing authority, they will own the project, and regardless of which political regime in place, they will be continued.
As of 2016, about 1,389 of the housing units had been completed, with about 98% of the funds budgeted for the project allegedly expended. The NPP government took issue with this and launched an audit into the project. The audit by the Ghana Institution of Surveyors, among other things, revealed that The original plan of constructing 5,000 units had been revised to 1,500, with no change in the cost component, a situation that was described as unacceptable by the former Works and Housing Minister Samuel Atachian, who pledged to ensure the prosecution of those involved in the project. The current leadership at the ministry is also concerned about the prosecution of those found culpable.
And I know very soon they are about finishing and sending their report to the AG. But regarding the details, I don't think this is appropriate for me to comment the details. But these are the bare facts I've presented.
But the content of the report, which has been cited as reasons for the delay in the utilization, is not limited to the revision of the number of housing units. The project is alleged to be riddled with corruption issues.
I don't believe in putting in the hands of housing development in the hands of politicians. Okay, because I believe that it's a technical job. The reason why you don't put it in the hands of politicians is so that you can ensure continuity of housing project. And also so that if you're not lucky, you find yourself an unscrupulous politician in office, the end result is what you have at Saglemi. Project failure is what you experience. But it will not be properly thought through, and the implementation will not go well, and corruption will be the order of the day. That is what Saglemi is all about.
Despite these revelations, a number of Ghanaians have expressed concerns about the continuous neglect of the facility. In a viral video by the APC flag bearer, he charged Ghanaians to forcefully occupy the completed housing units. The effect has been a social media trend with the hashtag Occupy Saglemi Now, with people expressing support for the move.
Ghanaians who are ready, I am giving government 1 month to work on this. If not, Ghanaians should move and come and start living in these homes. Just move and come and occupy. Just come and occupy. Just move and come and occupy. This is sad. This cannot be acceptable. You see? You hear the noise? Windows hitting and breaking. Just here, you see?
But government has condemned the views expressed in the said video.
The ministry finds this video to be a grandstanding gesture, laden with diabolical intent, to say the least. The ministry will ask the general public not to be wooed by the populist appeal by the producers of the video in question to indulge in recklessness in the name of forced occupation of an incomplete development. Since the absence of the primary infrastructure, it has consequence for their own health and safety. The public is assured that the ministry commits to securing the resources to completing the Saglemi housing project, regardless of the outcome of the ongoing criminal investigations.
A visit to the project site reveals what looks like a well-planned community on the outside, despite the clear signs of neglect shown by the unkept nature of the site. Government insists utility connections are yet to be done to make the place habitable.
An initial technical audit by the ministry revealed the lack of primary infrastructure to the Saglemi project site, thus limiting the utility of the development. The key primary infrastructure still outstanding include water supply and electricity.
Government says it is committed in completing the project. A team at the Ministry of Works and Housing has been asked to validate the audit report by the Ghana Institution of Surveyors. Based on the report, government says it will devise strategies to raise the $32 million needed to complete the rest of the 1,500 housing units.
Having understood the complexity of the issues surrounding this project, upon assumption of office as the new sector minister for Works and Housing, I directed the Architectural and Engineering Services Department, AESL, a consultancy agency under my ministry, to validate the report of the Ghana Institution of Surveyors and advise accordingly.
With this new report, is it part of their terms to indicate whether or not you're going to revert to the initial 5,000 or stick to the revised 1,500?
At this stage, we are looking at the 1,500, and in fact, the institution of surveillance reports mention an amount, a figure that will be needed to complete the 5,000. But as far as I'm concerned, my initial target is to finish with it.
So that was Hansen Ajeman's report 2 years ago. I need to say a few things have changed. So when the report was filed, there was an investigation. Now there's a full criminal prosecution involving the former minister at the time, Collins Dauda. Now the president of Ghana told us sometime last year that based on the assessment that he's been taken into, or that he's had of the project, it would cost us at least $100 million to even get the 1,500 units to be habitable. So he doesn't think government funds should go into the project anymore, which is, I think, why we are where we are today. So Kojo, sort of walk us through. So there's a prosecution going on. Just to understand government's concern, $200 million was signed, 5,000 units were to be produced, 1,500 units were produced, not finished. 200 million is finished.
Yeah.
So the investigation unearthed the view that something went wrong.
Yeah.
Which is why Mr. Dauda is facing trial.
Yes.
But people want to know, where were the buildings in terms of where have they got into? Why can't people go and live in them?
So the buildings and the technical expressions are at various stages of completion. In the video that you just played, there were some that were just at foundation level. There were some where the shells had been completed. Mm-hmm. There were some where shells had been completed, but there was no hard furnishing in them. There are some where you find just the first floor completed. So
is that part of the 1,500?
They are all part of the 1,506.
Really? But we saw some that looked
absolutely
pretty ready.
There are those that, like those that you find 2 floors, 3 floors, you find a shell available. Now when you go in, like was shown, when you go in, you will find the pipes and the iron rods exposed, just like how you showed it on the screen. So they are at various stages and the money is finished. And the status of the view that the persons who handled the transaction in that manner committed some crimes, and the state has taken that view to the court. The court will have a say on it. But the contractor has had his contract terminated, and now as it sits, the state is of the view that it should not be left to rot. And that's why the president has asked that we go through a process. Cabinet is signed off on it. We go through a process to identify a private investor and or private investors who will have the technical and financial competencies to help us finish it and to operationalize it.
And by your estimation, it will cost us $100 million to bring what we've seen on the screen to habitable level.
That's not my estimation. That's the estimation of the Ghana Institute of Surveyors.
But the question is, if you had continued the project from 2017, that's 7 years ago, we probably would have needed less than that, and we probably have people living in it and probably paying rent.
The interesting
so
thing,
the question to the government is, why leave it from 2017 and now start trying to solve it in this last minute?
So the history is this. Minister Tachia was the first minister from 2017. He commissioned the evaluation, which then determined that you needed about 100 million to complete it. And it was based on his report that the prosecution was then occasioned, I think, somewhere around 2021, if my timelines are correct. Minister Asensubuachi is the one who came to Cabinet requesting for funding to continue the project. And Cabinet, did the considerations, went through all the options and said, after spending 200 million on this, the state could not afford to spend any more, especially at that time of the beginnings of our economic challenges. And so the decision was made to look for private interest. The lot is now falling on me to, expedite that exercise to find the private interest to move it forward.
But could you, again, 2017 to 2020, are you saying all that that minister did was to do the investigation? Because you've had 4 years. We can walk and chew gum. You can be investigating something, but still improve upon. 4 years and the project was just there.
I think that everybody would wish, agreeably so, that we would have gone past the process where we are now a lot earlier. But the chronology of events is what I've shared with you. Our expectation is that now that we've issued the RFP and with the timelines and the transparency we're bringing to it, it will be better late than never.
Is there not a sense in which somebody can also accuse this government of causing financial loss? Because you and I know that when a project delays, it becomes more expensive. And then building materials also get inflated. So I'm going back to that point that overall, 2017 to 2024, fine, they may have mismanaged the project, and we don't have evidence of that where I sit. But this government has to concede that that was not the optimal way of dealing with this project.
I'm sure this government will argue that it can show the steps it's been taken through that period. There can be a judgment as to whether those steps have been quick enough or not quick enough. But today, what we have before us is an RFP that seeks to quicken this process and get on board the necessary private participation so that we can solve what has not been solved already.
So we have 1,506 units, which we need about $100 million to finish. Which the government says it doesn't want to spend its money to finish.
Or within the fiscal constraints cannot find resources from the treasury to finish. But also, even on a broader scale, the entire model for responding to the housing deficit is what we are changing as a government. That this old model where government has to take taxpayers' money or has to borrow money to try to build, be it STX or Kufu Affordable Housing or Saglemi, we've got to shift from it and do more of what those who have succeeded have been doing. And that's going the private sector approach, crowding in private sector with incentives so that they can then quicken project execution, project efficiency, and deliver those housing units at the price point that we are looking for to serve the market and reduce the deficit. And that's also a major chunk of the raison d'etre, which is now getting us to go in this particular manner.
But it seems like this is going to be difficult because the matter is in court, as in the protagonist. Indeed, I'm told somebody who was on the project even died. The former minister is in court. And at this 11th hour, you are launching a request for proposals.
But all of that is without prejudice to the work going forward. I mean, the questions of suspected criminality are questions that the court will take a decision on. But that does not stop us from going forward with what ought to be done. The work that has been done over the period about evaluation, trying to get new resources from the treasury that was not successful, and now coming to this point, is all now water under the bridge. Where we are now, we are clear in our minds. Government is a continuum. You may say 11th hour, but we are clear in our minds that with this offer out there to the world and the kind of investor interest which we are beginning to see even today between 10 a.m. and now, the kind of enquiries that people are making, what does this entail, what is this about, we are expectant, we are hopeful that we'll get good responses and get a good deal.
Do those things August. You just said not complicate and make more expensive the process? Because if I have money to complete a project and operationalize it, criminal prosecution is going on, buildings have not been touched for 6 years, site is overgrown.
No, so,
it's going to be complicated, more complicated, right?
We have not said it will be easy at all. We know that it's a difficult challenge, but it's one we are willing to work at and surmount. The first thing is that even where you have just bare land with trees and grass, developers are willing to go there to start from scratch, sometimes even sink below and start. Here's a situation where you have 1,506 uncompleted units with some limited infrastructure around it. And so a developer who's coming in to work with us is not starting from ground zero. He's actually starting with some headroom because some work has been done already. So it's actually easier for a developer to come on board and to work with us to complete this process. What that developer brings on board will be financing and the technical expertise, and then an operational plan.
So their own money
helps us to cross it.
Their own money or money from a bank that they bring?
Yes.
So do you give a guarantee?
No, we're not. So you, the private developer, you come in with your financial proposal, your technical proposal of how you're going to help complete this uncompleted project. And then also you add to it an innovative operationalization plan. We're sharing with you the original vision of Saglemi, 2,000 acres of land, out of which about 615 has been utilized for these 1,056 uncompleted projects. We're sharing with you the big vision. And then you come to the table with your innovation and other ideas on how we can work together to achieve it.
So if the person comes on board, will it still be an affordable housing project?
It depends on how we conclude the negotiation, because already some money has been sunk in which has not delivered the completed, at least even the 1,506 completed units. Somebody will have to take, and this is a famous expression these days, somebody will have to take a haircut somewhere, because unless you do that, then the end price will not be affordable They'll need to, something's got to give somewhere.
So what's going to give?
We will leave that for the point of negotiation. At this point, we won't put all our cards on the table. What we'll say is come forward with your proposals. Let's have an opportunity
the proposal must be based on, see, if this is going to be run in a private sense and sold to the highest bidder, if I'm the developer, it changes the calculus versus if government insists that because ab initio is an affordable housing project, you cannot sell a unit at, say, a certain price point.
Yes.
So we need to know those policy directions, even from the public perspective.
Yeah, so like we've said, the original vision is to deliver affordable housing. We're committed to that vision. What is affordable housing? There's a price point for affordable housing, somewhere about $35,000 for, I think, like about a 3-bedroom or so. Those price points will remain. Now, on the back end, we have to figure out who is going to take a little haircut so that we're able to complete this and deliver at that price point for the operationalization of the project. But as I've mentioned, those are things that will go into the negotiation. Today, we open the doors and we say, come to the table. We are making available all the documentation so far, technical, financial, operational. We are taking investors who are interested to the site. They can see the dilapidation reports, they can do their own valuation, and they come up with their own ideas on how they want to work with us to complete this. It is at that point that we'll then conclude a negotiation and then select a successful bidder and move forward with an agreement to conclude.
The point of view is talking to Minister for Works and Housing, Kojo Nkrumah, MP for Fasia Iribi, trying to unravel the complicated project, Saglemi Housing Project. Today, they launched a request for proposals for strategic investments for the completion and operationalization of this project, which originally cost $200 million. Now we're told could cost so much more. We'll come back and deal a little bit with affordable housing because there's so many projects going on. What's the real way of solving this almost 2 million units housing deficit? We'll also discuss the rains and what it means for the drains. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Point of View. We're still talking to the Housing Minister, Kojo Nkrumah. It's Works and Housing. And by the way, did you know that there are about 12 or so agencies? I didn't know this. So Rent Control Department, Rural Housing, TDC, ARC, HSC, PSHLSB. So many agencies under the Housing Ministry. Never heard of some of them until this interview. Now, there was a good article written by 3 gentlemen on affordable housing, published in yesterday's Graphic Business. Yao Apialate, George Anang Emmanuel, Opoku Bona. And they're basically saying affordable housing doesn't exist in Ghana. The argument is that the average Ghanaian earns around 3,000 cedis. That's about $100 a month to save. There's no way they can afford any of the affordable housing under any guise. They also list the affordable housing projects that have been started by various governments, like Oppong, Boteman, Committee 26 Bone, Saglemi, Amasaman, Shai Hills, Koforidia, Pokwase. And the price points have all been beyond the average Ghanaian. So I really want to come back to, when you say affordable housing, what are you talking about?
So let's talk housing.
All right.
And there are various segments of the housing market. Affordable housing usually is level 2. First, you have social housing, those who, at the very bottom of the tier, but still require shelter. Then you have affordable housing, those who have a job and an income, and if they could get a mortgage, they would be able to buy a property over a 15-20-year period. Because as you know, a house is not something that you encourage people to do cash down and purchase. And then you have middle class, upper middle class, and then those who are in the upper classes. Now, the price point, I think, that has been evolved for the average family 3-bedroom affordable housing is sitting somewhere around the $35,000 mark. The question is, can we do anything to bring it down to what some of our competitors are doing, about the $25,000 mark? That's number one. And even if it was, what percentage of our population can get a mortgage to purchase it? It brings 2 things that you have to do. On the supply side, you have to find a way to look for cheaper construction costs. Cost of materials are still very high. So how do you bring the cost of materials down? You got to deal with that. You also have to deal with construction financing. And because if even a developer has to borrow at what, 25-30% just to finance already expensive materials to build, then by the time he's done, it's not affordable housing. Then even if it was, what is it, $25,000-$30,000, you are now asking how many people here with us in this room can get a mortgage to qualify for that.
Yeah.
These mortgages are available to people who are earning salaries. That's people who are in the formal sector.
Yeah.
And if you take that as a percentage of the workforce in this country, then you have a more difficult Rubicon to cross. So these are the reasons for which people say it doesn't exist and it can't be solved. What it also means that you need a hydra-headed solution. So there are a number of things we are doing. Number one, we are not saying that you can solve housing with affordable housing only. And that is why you've noticed recently that we've announced that we're going to start a district housing project, which uses local materials out there in the districts to try and tackle the lowest tier of the structure that I've just explained to you. We are also in the process of putting together an incentives package, which we intend to get cabinet and subsequently parliamentary approval for, which seek to make construction materials cheaper and easier to access on the Ghanaian market, so that the cost of construction can be brought down. Tied to that is dealing with the construction financing. Already I've been working with the Association of Bankers, John Ewuwa and team, to explore ways by which they can get cheaper financing which can be dedicated towards the construction industry for those who are going to come into these programs that we are looking at. And we are hopeful that on that supply side, in fact, some of the suggestions they've made, which we've started engaging, for example, the Minister for Pensions on, etc., look very, very, very positive. And we are hopeful that that can help bring the first side, which is the supply side, a bit lower. Then on the demand side as well, the same route of providing cheaper funding to the financial institutions, as has been piloted in the National Home Ownership Fund, on the flip side, can also provide mortgages to people in the formal working class. But of course, that's just a small portion of our population. And so there's a part of the answer that is also now on the shoulders of the financial institutions to explore how they can do better credit scoring and therefore be able to extend mortgages to people who are not in the formal sector.
So let me give some numbers to help our discussion. Based on the calculation these authors make, affordable housing should fall within the $10,000 to $14,000 bracket because the average Ghanaian earns about $6,000 a year. So they can afford $250 a month. Second rule of thumb, you shouldn't spend more than 40% of your income on your mortgage. So for a 20-year mortgage to work, an affordable house must be between 120,000 cedis and 170,000 cedis. Kojo, of all the projects we've listed, is there any that can guarantee a house, after all the things you've done, that you can buy a house between $10,000 to $14,000 in Ghana?
Not that I'm aware of. But Bernard, here's a catch in the calculation that they have done. They are anchoring this on current income levels. And I think that if you anchor on current income levels, you assume that there's only one side to the equation. It's not just the demand side and the affordability side. It's also the supply side and bringing down the cost of construction, the cost of construction finance. Because if you don't deal with that one as well, which is irrespective of what incomes people are earning, if you don't deal with that, you are still going to have products on the market that are way above the price point of what people's earning capacity is today. And that's why the approach we are trying to deploy is a double barrel gun. Our expectation, we don't expect to finish and build all 1.8 million homes today. But my target is that we can deliver a policy framework acceptable to cabinet and to parliament that answers this question. And ministers who will come after me can then pick it and run because the blueprint would have been laid.
Recently, you said 10,720 units under development to address housing deficit. Where are these units and what will be the average price?
So, for example, you've got 8,000 units in Pokwase that we are working on. What I've instituted is meetings with the developers and the coordinators every 2 weeks. And then I'm on site every month. I've done one site visit already. I have agreed with them that I will be there every month so that we can push it some more. That alone is 8,000 of the 10,000. We are fast-tracking work on about some 320 homes in Tesano, but that is designated for the security services, and I've given them by June for us to be able to hand it over to the security services. So
the 8,000 for Pokwase, when will the first unit be ready?
they are a bit behind schedule on works. In fact, as at the time I went there, they haven't put one block up.
Meanwhile, the president launched in December.
Yes, because the ground infrastructure work had delayed.
Wow.
Yes, we have now gone through a process of fast tracking and ensuring that we're able to get some payment for the contractors so that they can move. And once they are moving, you see the upper units going up. But in our technical meetings we've had so far, they are starting excavations to start some of the vertical units there. And that's why we're doing this 2
So when will they finish the first units?
I won't call timelines.
Definitely not before the election.
Well, I won't call out timelines now, but I can assure you that you will see a lot of progress on work as we work with them to get these units up. So that's 8,000 in Pokwase, 320 in Tesano. We've already done 1,072 units in Tema, TDC, around Oppong, which have already been sold out. Those were sold around, I think, $20,000-$25,000 as a price point. And we've just secured financing, and let me give a lot of plaudits to Alice, the chief executive, and her board and team, the Honorable Bracco and team.
TDC.
Yes, they've worked with us. We've secured financing to start work on 832 new homes. That will be phase 4. And we're expecting that in the next about 4 weeks or so, we can go and break ground to start that one.
Still within the $20,000 range or $25,000?
That is still hopefully within the $20,000 range. Koforidua has about 325 homes from President Kufuor's initiative that are still outstanding. And, you know, it's still there, dilapidating. We are currently going through a process with the State Housing Company where, again, we can bring on board private sector that can fund the completion of those projects and then put them off onto the market. And just on Friday, I'll be in Kumasi. We want to hand over some 30 units that we've just completed in Kumasi as well.
So most of what you said do not qualify to be social.
No.
They are so,
I mean,
and within the affordable range,
absolutely,
they are beyond the $10,000 to $15,000 mark, which currently the average Ghanaian can afford.
So I don't think that in Ghana today we are even doing social housing. Social housing has to be paid for by somebody.
We are not there yet.
No.
And for affordable, we are not even in the lower threshold.
We are not in the lower threshold.
We are 20,000 above.
And that is why it is important that we put a framework together that brings the most efficient people, the people with the best technology, the people who can develop projects with speed, because you know the speed with which you develop the project reduces the cost as well.
But Kojo, you've been in government for 7 years.
I've been housing minister for a month and a half. So what we are looking to do is to put together a clear framework that now brings on board the private sector to do it. Anywhere in the world that has been done and done well, like the examples that I've given you, it's been done because there's a partnership between the public sector and the private sector.
This is an indictment on the government.
Well, I don't think...
I mean, you've had 7 years and you're now developing a framework to make affordable housing possible at this 11th hour.
No, if you watch Pokwase already, you will see that Pokwase is a pilot of the model we intend to operate. And
but the price point will not be the range that we spoke about.
It is in the higher tiers of affordable housing. Social housing we haven't started. Affordable housing we have started, save for the fact that because of, in particular, the construction costs in this country, it is still on the high side. That is why we now need to move to the next level of having a framework that brings down the cost of construction.
Pokwase, you've admitted that not even one block is on the ground.
Yes.
This is 2024.
Yes, because
you've been in government since 2017.
Yeah, well, because the kind of ground infrastructure that needs to be done, about 230 acres, doing roads, sewage, water systems, it's not been, easy to pick off the cart. Payments to even the contractors to do this groundwork, especially at this time when we've had our own financial challenges as a country, it's not been very easy to do. Thankfully, we've been able to resolve some of those ones, and we are moving.
But the financial crisis are recent. By the admission of this government, it's 2022 that in fact, you can say COVID. I'm pushing this because, look, housing is a basic need.
Absolutely.
And if it's taking 7 years to figure out a way to do it, that's completely
because we have been doing the traditional model of government providing the housing.
How have you been doing it?
Some of the ones that I've been listing out to you are not projects that started a year or two ago, but it's been the traditional approach of government itself trying to do it.
So when did we realize that now we have to use a different approach?
Well, when Pokwase was conceived, it was quite clear from that time that the government came to a view that it's better to do this with the private sector. And that's when Pokwase was conceived, and then you have to go into land acquisition and make it available, and now you are moving there. And now we are now looking to formalize this so that it's not just a project-specific one, but it's a policy that has been put together, and you can have it then happen, for example, in Dedesua, in the Ashanti region, where we have now secured some land to replicate the same kind of model there. In TDC, where they've done 1,072, from about 2020, if I recall, till now, it's a realization that there needs to be that partnership between the public sector and the private sector.
Beyond housing, another headache you have is flooding. The rain started this week and it's not looking that good.
Yeah.
We are told there's a big $200 million Garrett project, which was again launched sometime last year. But I don't think the project has gotten to a stage where if the rains come with the ferocity that we expect, flooding will not occur.
Yeah.
Why is that the case?
I mean, I have, in my last meeting with the contractors and the coordinators, expressed our disappointment that the project hasn't moved as quickly as possible. The original project construct required what they call a 2-level review process. So for everything that was being done, you needed 2 subsequent reviews before they could actually move into execution. And it was one of the things that was adding to the delay in project execution. What we've done is to shorten the curve now. So now we have a concurrent review of the designs, etc., so that we don't have to wait for this very long period for the reviews to take place before people can move on site and start delivering.
Are those delays inbuilt into the project design by the World Bank?
Yes. They were inbuilt.
So it's not necessarily because the contractor is slow?
No. Those were part of the project design, inbuilt as part of the project framework. It's only quite recently that we've succeeded in having the World Bank agree to amend that, allow concurrent reviews of designs, etc., as they go.
Does this include any money from government? Just to be clear before you continue, is this Garrett project purely World Bank?
World Bank. Another matter was that in the original project conceptualization, they did not factor into it the point that project affected persons could be compensated from the project resource pot. So what it meant was that you needed extra money from elsewhere to compensate people to move so that you could then do the work. And that's also added to some of the delays. Now we've managed again to get that green light to use part of the funding to take care of project affected persons. And I think just last week when I worked with the contractors, the point we're making to them was that when you pay the compensation, secure that site so that you don't pay and people still stay there, or pay and they come back and you still can't get the work.
So in the context of Accra, this Garrett project starts with the Odo River Basin.
Yes.
What's the idea? To dredge the whole basin?
No, so first let me give you a big picture. The Garrett project is only on 1 out of the about 9 drainage channels in Accra. But you know, the one that has been the most difficult to manage over the period, that is the Odo. Part of it is about dredging the Odo. Then there are parts of also creating, may I say, concrete storm drain channels to be able to move water from some of the already existing earth drains into better pathways to get out of the city when you have inordinate amounts of rain that are coming down.
I see. But the Odo is like the central focus point.
It is one of the major ones. And then the whole Kanishi area, which requires some major drainage works to be able to channel the waters out of there. Because as you notice, anytime it rains, Kanishi gets flooded. And it's been so ongoing for a while now. But just to give you a bigger picture, I found out when I, then started asking for documentation to understand that we are only so far tackling just about 2% of the flood control program master plan in the Greater Accra region, just about 2%, because you require a lot of resources to do it. There are difficulties with moving people out of these ways, but these are things that we need to mobilize some more resources for and then get done eventually, because if we don't, as climate change exacerbates and we are getting inordinate amounts of rain, the challenges are not going to go away.
Again, the question of why we've left it so late. The Garrett project started last year. But is that the main flood intervention? Because the World Bank project, are you saying that the government of Ghana...
the government of Ghana is executing what we call the National Flood Control Program.
Okay.
With its own resources. And resource allowing, my data that I have shows that we have only tackled about 2% of the potential flood hotspots in the Greater Accra region.
Only 2%?
Only 2%. Now Garrett is coming in to help us deal with the Odo, which, when successful, will then take us to some higher levels. But it had its own challenges with the project framework initially, some of which challenges we have now tried to resolve currently.
Some would say under the previous government, Ibrahim Ahmad tried to deseal the Odo for free. He was criticized at the time by the opposition. And again, we've waited till 2023 for the Garrett project, which is the real dredging project. Why have we left it so late? And on hindsight, were we unfair in criticizing what he was trying to do at the time?
Opinions vary on, what people try to do at various points in time. I think for me, the bigger question that I like to deal with is, how are we mobilizing the resources that are required to tackle this program head on? That's number one. How are we designing the program so that it's not just about desilting and dredging? Because that is just a temporary thing. You desilt and you dredge, and even as the water levels or the tide levels rise from the sea, you have entry of sand from the other side. You have people littering because they are not covered drains. So it's about, what is the program? What is a program review mechanism? What are the resources to tackle it? If somebody decides to help you out at a point in time, that's well and good, but that may not be the final solution to it. And as I'm explaining to you, even what we are doing is only just about 2% of it.
So
and
if
we
it
need
rains,
to tackle it head on.
Last year there was a lot of rain.
Yeah.
If it rains at the same level it rained last year, Accra will get flooded.
Yes, Accra will get flooded. We need
Can we blame you for that?
No, you can't.
Can we blame government for that?
Well, government takes the credit and the blame for everything that goes wrong or right in this country. So that is not something I'm going to contest. But what we need to do is to have a big picture view of the National Flood Control Program, what it takes to tackle the problem, make the resources available for it, and get it done. Because if we don't, for example, the first flood control program, at least according to my data, which I have, is 2018. And then you move to 2020. That was the second time major funding was made available. Then you have 2023 National Flood Controlling Program, some of which is still being executed. I have the opportunity to talk quite a bit of them shortly. We are now trying to lock down resources for the 2024 flood control program. So all the work you see me doing, trying to push contractors to move, it's in the 2023 program. And I'm saying that all of that put together is just about 2% of the challenge that we have. So we've got to tackle it head on, and not necessarily about this one has dredged this small part of this or small part. We have to tackle it head on if we want this problem to go away.
This is still the point of view. Minister for Water Resources, is that still the name? Or just Works and Housing now? Kojo Oppong Nkrumah MP is our guest. We've dealt with the Saglemi housing project. We're dealing with the issue of works to prevent flooding. When we come back, we'll talk about the Akosombo Dam spillage, because it's one of the things he needs to deal with, the aftermath and what to do for the flood affected victims. Stay with us. Welcome back. Point of view tonight is looking at the housing question, the flooding and drainage question, but also the resettlement and rebuilding question. City has been seriously involved in the lower voter relief campaign, 20 constituencies, 4 or 5 buildings, a hospital recently built. But the Minister for Works has taken particular interest in this matter. So has it always been the remit of the ministry, or to your entry into the ministry that has sort of taking you to this?
No, work had started even before I came in, because when it initially occurred, and our data says 19 districts across 4 regions, when it initially occurred, the Rural Housing Department, working with LUSPA and then the Regional Coordinating Council, started basic data gathering of who had been affected and who was being moved out of their place, together with NADMO, etc. Now, what we needed to do was to validate the data, because we were beginning to see some inconsistencies there, to validate the data of who cannot move back into their original house. If you had a mud house that has been overtaken by water, the water may have moved away, but it lacks structural integrity. You may not be able to go back. There were islands that, are totally submerged now and people cannot go back. So we went back, I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago, as part of that validation exercise. In fact, only this morning when I got to the office, I have the validation report that has come through, sorting out specifically who has been validated as requiring new accommodation, how many of them belong to a particular household, and therefore how many houses. We're going to go through that, and that is what gives us clarity of how many housing units we have to support our brothers and sisters with. But already working with the Regional Coordinating Council in the Volta region, and shortly I'll be doing same with the Eastern region, we have already broken ground for work to start on some housing units with resources from the Common Fund and from the RCCs, even while we complete this validation exercise, because no matter what happens, you're still going to have to build
do you have an idea of how many people need new houses, or how many households?
That is a report that is being ferried to my office this morning.
So
I
you
will
look
want
at
to
it?
speculate. I'll look at it. We'll put all the data out. I believe in transparency. We'll put the data out that this is the number of new housing units that need to be put out to accommodate people in specific districts, and we'll put out.
And who will determine who gets to live in those houses?
Well, thankfully, they have worked with unit committee members, assembly men in these areas, the district assembly, the National Intelligence Bureau was also very helpful, LUSPA. So it was an intersectorial committee at the lowest level that has worked to make a determination. Because you initially had funny stories where somebody living with somebody now comes trying to claim a house, and then then they want two instead of one. But all of that data is what they've been able to now tidy up, which is what is going to give us clarity of how many units we have to end with, and that will then lead into the allocations.
Looking at the length of time it's taken us to put up buildings, and the fact that this government is in this 11th hour, whoever wins is a different government that's coming, how sure are you that whatever you're trying to do will not become an abandoned project come January 7, 2025?
So we have to set the example today by ensuring that the projects that we met are continued. Government is a continuum. The government of Ghana will continue regardless of which administration is in power today. And I think that as we do more of that, and as we get broader buy-in on the things that we are doing, regardless of who is in power, which administration is in power, it will continue. I'm optimistic that our administration or our party will birth a new administration. But to be sure that even that administration follows through with what we are doing, that's why I keep talking about going to Parliament. So with the resettlement, when we are done, I'm going to go to Parliament with the report. First, when I'm done
Saglemi, we went to Parliament when you came to office.
No, that was
for 7 years. Nothing happened there.
No, well, but I've explained to you all that has happened over the 7-year period.
Do you have the opposition's buy-in do you have an opposition's buy-in or minorities buy-in in the new approach you're using? Because then the same for both Saglemi and this new thing you're doing at the Akosombo spillage thing.
Let me answer Akosombo first. I'll go to Saglemi. Akosombo, we've already even been in Parliament to have a conversation on it. When I am done with these numbers that have been brought up, I will go back to Parliament to make that report available to the August House, that this is the validated number. This is what it will cost to provide housing for these persons. This is what we have now. This is what we've started. This is the period that we're going to have to use it. If you come subsequently as Minister for Housing, I would imagine that all of us haven't coalesced around this. You will continue what we have started. Same with Saglemi. The decisions that have been taken by this administration, when Parliament resumes, will be before Parliament. We'll make it all available.
The minority disagree with bringing the private sector.
They want more taxpayers' money, which we don't have now, to be spent on Saglemi after 196 was spent on it and wasn't successful. We disagree with them, and we believe that we can have a conversation in Parliament that clearly delineates the criminal matters from what does it take to complete Saglemi and Kufuor's outstanding projects and all of the other outstanding projects that administration started and were not completed. But now we need to move beyond this thing of one administration comes and abandons projects, and it starts now.
That's why I need to build consensus with them.
Absolutely,
and that is why.
That is why. Well, but you see, it's not about I agree or disagree. We need to talk through the issues and come to a certain consensus on what makes the most sense. If Ivory Coast is giving land banks tax breaks, public services, so that private developers will bring hundreds of millions of dollars to come develop housing. If Kenya is doing something, if Austria is doing something, if Morocco is doing something, and it is working, why do we want to still say that government should go and borrow money to come and build houses for people, or government should take taxpayers' money to buy houses or build houses for people?
Private sector people usually don't build for people who can afford it. So private sector housing in Ghana is more expensive than in most parts of Africa.
And that is why I started off by saying that. So the first part of it is to deal with the cost of construction, the cost of construction finance, and then to partner with the private sector to agree on a price point that is really affordable. If we don't do that, and if we don't come to an understanding that this is what must be done, we'll be running around in circles.
So the first block for the Akosombo thing, can you give me a date when it will be laid?
I would like to check those timelines and share with you what I have.
We've been talking to Kojo Oppong, Minister for Works and Housing, on 3 key issues: Saglemi housing project, on desilting, Conti project, the Garrett project, which will open up our drains so that we don't get flooded. And of course, we also spoke about the Akosombo spillage and rebuilding and resettlement. We hope you've learned something. Thank you for being on the show.
Let me congratulate yourself, City,
Yes.
and sister media houses for the fantastic job you guys have been brilliant, even taking the lead sometimes ahead of us in doing some of the things that must be done. Congratulations.
Thank you, Kojo. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.